My name is Aziz Kapadia. I'm the field CISO of Data Fabric and UVM at Zscaler. I came in through an acquisition of a company called Avalor Security. Today, we're going to talk about unified vulnerability management. But before I jump into that, let me just give you some history on Avalor Security. Avalor Security came out of stealth at RSA of 2023. The purpose of the organization was to build a data platform that could help service the needs of cybersecurity challenges. The first focus was unified vulnerability management. Why unified vulnerability management? Well, it's been a problem for a very long time, and there has not been a complete solution to support your program from end to end. 10 months later, we got acquired by Zscaler. You may wonder why. Zscaler is traditionally in the business of zero trust network architecture. If you look on the left-hand side, you'll see the zero trust exchange. This includes products like ZIA for internet access, ZPA for product access, and a ton of point solutions focusing on IoT, focusing on external attack surface management. So Zscaler went on a journey to build some services that can give you a holistic view of risk in your organization. Products like Risk 360, products like Business Insights. Now, if you look on the left-hand side, you could see that, hey, this looks like the world's best telemetry. It has all of my data, all of my logs. I want to be able to bring that data in to provide a complete view. Now, you also want to bring in third-party data sources, and that was one of the major reasons Zscaler decided to acquire Avalor. If you look right in the middle of the right-hand side, you will see the Zscaler data fabric for security. This enables two major functions. One, it allows us to build platform services. If you look at many of the larger organizations in cybersecurity, they're in the business of acquiring companies, packaging things together, and selling it as a platform, when truly platform services do not exist today. Our objective is to give you true platform services by bringing in all of your data from Zscaler, bringing any third-party data into a single data platform, and then servicing them through applications like Business Insights, Risk 360, breach prediction, threat hunting, copilots, and of course, unified vulnerability management right in the center. Now, unified vulnerability management already existed at Avalor. I'm going to take you through what a successful UVM pipeline looks like. Now, you may wonder that, hey, UVM is so old. Why are we still struggling? Well, these are some basic questions that organizations cannot answer today. Are all my endpoints correctly deployed with the agents? How vulnerable are my critical applications or even other business services? How many assets do I truly have in my organization? And of course, how has my risk posture changed over time? Basic questions, but can't answer them because it's a big data challenge. Again, this has been something that folks have been trying to solve for a couple of decades now. There have been many generations of solutions to try to address it. Originally, there were scanners that were looking at CVSS scores, which equated to about 30–40% of your organization's vulnerabilities being deemed as highs or criticals. Just something impossible to remediate. Gen 1 aggregators came out and said, hey, let's look at dynamic data, exploitability, volume and velocity in the wild. This way we can shrink that pile of bones down to a much more manageable 5% maybe. Now, that was specifically for CVEs, but the threat landscape continued to change. The attack surface continued to grow. We had modern technologies like cloud services, custom application development. So Gen 2 aggregators came out trying to solve challenges from very specific perspectives. CASM for cyber asset and attack surface management, ASPM for application security posture management. Now, the challenge is when you start with one perspective, it's really challenging to accommodate other needs of your clients. And why is this challenging? Well, for multiple reasons. First, I'll start with enrichment. When you use vulnerability threat intelligence, it has to be dynamic, it has to be scalable, and it has to support all the sources that your client needs. So If you have internal threat intelligence teams, if you subscribe to services like Recorded Future or Mandiant, you want to be able to bring that in. You don't want to be limited to just the vendor provided threat intelligence. The second thing is scoring is a black box. You want to be able to look under the hood and understand why things are scored the way they are. Does it have the right context? Does it have the right threat intelligence? Is it taking the adjusted value based on my organization's needs? And beyond that, you've got to be able to adjust it to accommodate your risk methodology. The next thing is scalability. Scalability is a two-part problem. One is the performance itself. How long does it take to index? How long does it take to ingest the data? How long does it take to create reports in the user experience? But the other side of it is perspective. Today, I'm doing application security, I'm doing traditional infrastructure scanning, but what about tomorrow? What if I want to do SSPM, which is SaaS Security Posture Management? Does my platform support that? Customizations are also key. I'm not saying hack away. All I'm saying is we want to make sure that the technology aligns with your business process. You shouldn't have to force changing your business process to align with the technology. You have a good business process in place, or maybe you have a good vision for a business process in place. Let's make sure that the technology can adapt to that. Inflexible data models, well, this is a key challenge today. If you think about all the solutions that are part of unified vulnerability management, it could be your EDR solution, it could be your CMDB, it's your traditional scanners, it's your CSPM solution, it's your application security scanners. All of these tools have different schemas, and you've got to be able to support insights from all of them. So the data models need to be extensible so you can adapt to various schemas and support any new integration that is required. And of course, insights across multiple personas, multiple tiers. The CISO needs a board level report. The application team needs a report for their application portfolio. The Windows team needs to understand what are the critical patches that are going to give them the best bang for their buck in terms of remediation. You've got to have insights across the board. Now, these are just some of the challenges. Let me show you what Nirvana looks like. Let's start with unification. Unification means large-scale processing, requires flexible data models, support for various schemas that I mentioned, and also the integration velocity. Today, you're doing VON scanning on your traditional infrastructure. Tomorrow, you want to do SSPM. We've got to be able to support that integration. Well, maybe you found a better VON scanner that you like. Well, we've got to be able to support the new vendor. If you look on the right-hand side, you'll see that we can bring in traditional data like vulnerability, threat intelligence, exposure, but then also other findings and contextual feeds like asset metadata, EDR data, identity, incidents, CSPM, manual data like pen test results, threat modeling, and of course, any kind of mitigating controls as well. Now, we have a partner called Rubrik who does security backup or data backup. We want to bring in that data, and one may wonder why. Well, an hourly backup is relevant to ransomware-related vulnerabilities. It's a mitigating control, so we want to bring in that context. We want you to have the ability to enhance, replace, add tooling in the future as you find appropriate. The second piece is the harmonization, so the normalization, the deduplication, the correlation, the contextualization, and this needs to be cross-referenced. You're going to have insights across assets and findings and apps and other entities like business units. You want to be able to see your insights from the perspective of any other entity with the context of any entity around it. Some things to consider. You've got to be able to query data to give you any outcomes you need, whether it's dashboarding and analytics or it's workflows. Everything depends on a query. So we built a proprietary query engine that allows you to query any data across any perspective with any attribute at the end of the day. And you don't have to worry about performance issues or scale issues like traditional query engines like Elasticsearch. You can write and/or queries. It doesn't take a long time to index the data. That's the power of our query engine. The next state is prioritization. Again, scoring should be a glass box, not a black box. Here's just one example of how clients use our scoring methodology. Let's say you've identified a vulnerability that has a CVSS 7 score. Well, what if it's on an asset that has EDR? What if it's in a dev environment? Well, those are reasons to deprioritize the remediation efforts. However, you're going to eventually fix it. Let's just fix what's more relevant first. So what's more relevant? Let's say another CVS has 7 identified in your environment on an asset that's exposed to the internet, or that CVE has a known exploit, or that asset has access to PII data or other sensitive data. What if the user sitting on that asset is clicking on phishing links? Let alone you find out that that user is your CFO? Well, that's a major reason to prioritize that vulnerability. So how do we do that? First, we allow you to bring in the base score, which could be CVSS, it could be EPSS, it could be the original score from your scanner, it could be sourced from a threat intelligence solution. It could also be something that comes from your internal threat intelligence team. This is designed to give you a baseline for the inherent risk. Next, we want to overlay it with any of the metadata related to risk factors and mitigating controls, similar to the examples you see here on the left-hand side. This way, you can customize the score to meet your risk methodology. Now that you've prioritized, we got to get it in the hands of the right people. This is an industry-wide challenge. Most folks don't have clean CMDBs. And even if they do have that data available, it's hard to assign with so many caveats. One example is if you have a vulnerability on a Linux server, if it is a kernel level vulnerability, well, that needs to go to the Linux team. But what if it's a Java vulnerability? Now I have to assign it to the application team because they have to do their testing and follow their SDLC. How do we do that? We automate it for you. We use metadata, we use logic. The key is at the end of the day, we want to automatically assign the right vulnerabilities and remediation actions to the right teams. We want to let them know what their priorities are, and then we want to help them track that through its remediation. This is one of the key components of Avalor. Next, workflow and automation. Well, we've assigned it to someone. What are we going to do about it? Our most common integration is a ticketing system. We do two-way synchronization, so you can track progress bidirectionally, but we're not just limited to ticketing integrations. We can integrate with workflows like patch management for auto patching. We can integrate with cloud workload protection. We could even integrate with kill switches, just in case you've got some critical vulnerability with some threat and you just want to shut it down. We can automate that for you. Downstream integrations must be deeply configured. The normalization has to be maintained across all tooling and all workflows. Last but not least, analytics and outcomes. This is what we drive towards at the end of the day. Our goal is to reduce that risk and understand why we're not so efficient today, understand the gaps, and of course, show progress as well. Insights need to be across executives, BUs, op teams. You need to track metrics like SLAs, mean time to resolve. Customization is key. There's generally 3 trains of thoughts when it comes to dashboards. One, let me give you a static dashboard. You can run some filters, you can run some pivots, but you're going to be limited to that static dashboard. 2, let me give you a handful of widgets, maybe 5, maybe 10, maybe 15 widgets. And then you can pick and choose the data points you want in the widgets, but you still are confined within the scope of that widget. And then there's the third option, which allows you to build whatever you want from the ground up in a simple UI, simple UX. If you look at that example that I built, fully custom dashboard built in about 15 minutes. That's the power of the fabric. We'll go ahead and summarize the entire solution. 1, we're going to bring in all of your data, traditional vulnerability data, other findings, contextual feeds, your CSPM, your CMDB, mitigating controls, pen test, anything you want to bring in that's relevant to your program, we can bring in. Then we roll everything up into entities like assets, findings, applications, business services to deduplicate, contextualize, correlate, build the relationships so you can have a security knowledge graph. Once you have that graph, you can customize any reports, any analytics, any workflows. That's the power of the data fabric for security. I really hope this was very helpful. If you have any questions, continue learning on avalor.io.